Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on tackling gender-based violence through legal empowerment. Today is Tuesday, April 16th. My name is Maddie, and I work for Namati's Global Legal Empowerment Network. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on tackling gender-based violence through legal empowerment. And we will share the full recording and highlights later on our website. I also want to make sure that everyone can hear well and is able to use. You will see a questions panel where you can type in your comments and communicate with us. There is also a button for you to get our attention. Feel free to try it out now. I'll wait and see if everyone's able to use it. All right, I see some hands raised. Awesome, thank you. So please type in your comments, ideas, and suggestions and questions as we move on. Please mute if you're not speaking during the webinar. Thank you. We want to hear from you, and we've saved the entire second half of the webinar for questions and discussion. So please bear with us as we respond to your requests and comments, and we'll get to them during the second half. This subject of gender-based violence is the most popular thematic issue among all of our network members, as well as issues of women's rights. We're so glad that you're able to join us for this webinar, and we look forward to hearing from you. We will first hear from Farzana Khan, the head of programs for My Choices Foundation and Operation Peacemaker in India. Next, Kate Flatley, the executive director and founder of Women's Justice Initiative in Guatemala, will present. Fatima Adamu, the programs manager of Isawali Empowerment Initiative in Nigeria, will wrap up our presentations, and then we will have time for Q&A. And could we have our presenters just show their webcams briefly to say hello? Hey, Kate, thanks for joining us. Fatima, Farzana, thank you so much. It's really great to have you guys. So with that, we can start off with the presentation from Farzana. Take it away. All right, Farzana, I think we can hear you now.
Sure, Maddie, thank you so much for your quick intro. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the session on tackling gender-based violence through legal empowerment. I'm Dr. Farzana Khan, Head of Programs, My Choices Foundation from India. I just want to give you a quick intro of My Choices Foundation. It was established in 2012 with the aim to give women and girls a choice to live violence-free life. We believe that every woman and girl deserve to live a peaceful life. And we have two operations, Operation Red Alert and Operation Peacemaker. Operation Red Alert deals with ending sex trafficking through its grassroots prevention programs. India, there is a lot of trafficking happening in India, and most of the states who are traffic prone are not aware about this issue. So through Operation Peacemakers, there is a prevention programs happening in 6 states. Whereas Operation Peacemaker deals with domestic violence issue and child sexual abuse issue in India. We have 5 centers across in Hyderabad and one in another district, Warangal. We are based in South India. Can you please turn the next slide? Next slide, okay, Maddie. Before I give you the status of domestic violence or violence against women in India, I would like to share a small story behind the birth of Operation Peacemaker. When our founder, Elka Grobler, who is a South African, decided to move India to work with women for the cause of women and wanted to use her finance and banking background to give economic empowerment to women. And as groundwork, when she started meeting with women organizations, community women, grassroots women, and asked them what is the one thing that she can do for them. And you won't believe that majority of the women said that domestic violence. Domestic violence is the biggest issue that they are facing, and they want a home free of violence and abuse. And this was the eye opener for Ilka, and she decided to work in the domain of domestic violence. Domestic violence is most prevailed in India but least reported or recognized because it is considered a private affair that cannot come out in the public. And if I am talking about the situation, the recent survey that is done by National Family Health Survey of India saying that 200 plus million women are affected by domestic violence. And these are the reported. Imagine the unreported cases. Like any South Asian countries, India is very patriarchal, and its unique cultural customary practices make the situation worst. Uh, uh, if we talk about the mindset of the people, more than 50% women, girls, men, women, girls, and boys thinks that domestic wife beating is justifiable act in certain situations. And I'm not talking about any old or medieval data. It's a recent survey that has done. And now you can imagine the situation in India about domestic violence issue and how it is deep rooted in the Indian society. Next slide, please. Maddie, can you turn the next slide? So as I was talking that considering the magnitude and complexities, we designed our program to address it holistically through our intervention and prevention programs. Under intervention, we directly respond to the domestic violence cases through counseling. When I am talking about counseling, it is complete journey that counselor walks with the client and empowering her to become survivors from victim. It also involves counseling of perpetrator, most of the times husbands, and extended family members. Because in India, the marriage is not happening with one person, it's involved a lot of family members, and that makes situation more complex. So in this process, we try to empower each and everybody and to show them that how violence is bad, and it's a rights of women to live a violence-free life. In the process of counseling, healing starts, and clients get empowered to get out of trauma and abuse, to take decisions about their lives. We also provide free legal counseling and education, legal education to the clients, and we file their cases with police and courts. In India, legal battle is very lengthy and tiring. It is almost impossible for women to fight this battle alone, and we become her support and strength during this whole process. The other strategy to address the violence and abuse through prevention programs. At My Choices, we believe that cycle of abuse can be break through strategic prevention programs with active involvement of communities and younger generation. We have designed a lot of awareness programs, keeping all strata of society in mind, which includes but not limited to community, school, college, girls, boys, corporate companies, etc. We have designed a very specific year-long program to address the adolescent girls and boys who are at high risk in the community. We call them Shakti and Asli Champion program. In India, there is a high prevalence of child sexual abuse. Researchers suggesting that more than 50% of children going through child sexual abuse. So keeping that problem in mind, we have designed a specific program with the school-going girls and boys to make them safe and aware. Maddie, can you take me the impact slide? You can see all our college programs, school programs, pictures here. And these are the community awareness program sessions that we are handling. And now please take me to the impact slide, Maddie. Next. Since 2012, we are addressing this issue, and we have registered more than 7,000 cases at our 5 centers. And most of the time, these cases get resolved through counseling, because in counseling, it's not about just dealing with the women, but educating the whole family and making them understand that how violence is affecting as family. And this is proven very good methodology, where not taking directly to the courts, and addressing the issue through counseling. We have 79 legal cases in the court so far. And if I'm talking about the workshops, community training workshops, awareness program, more than 62,000 women we reached in the community. And we have reached more than 43,000 girls and boys in through school and college programs. Uh, Next slide, Maddie. So, keeping the legal empowerment work in mind, what is the unique for my choices? And I think in the process of legal empowerment, peacemakers, which we call community paralegals also, are the most unique and sustained model that we have adopted. A peacemaker is a community woman who is trained on rights and basic skills of counseling. She is the one who goes in the community, identify the women who is going through abuse and violence. She builds the trust and gives hope to women that there is a solution. It is easy for the women to connect with her because community women cannot open to other people whom they consider as outsiders, because in India domestic violence is a very is not likely to talk, you cannot talk in open. So this community women whom we call peacemaker is a great source where they can connect, they can see that oh, there is someone who is living in my own community and I can trust. Trust building is the most important aspect that our peacemaker is building in the community. Peacemaker encourages her to come out and seek help. Finally, she brings her to Center for Counseling and other legal help. She is always in touch with her. The most important thing is continuous follow-up is happening by these paralegals. They never leave her alone in this whole process. They are connected through center, through community, and she act a very powerful tool to help the women. These peacemakers are also great source of community education. All our community programs are done by these peacemakers only. And the unique about the peacemaker is that these women themselves are gone, many of these women themselves gone through domestic violence. So during training they first transform themselves and they walk the journey of empowerment and then helping the community also. And many of these women even not gone to any formal schools. After training and after working with this, they can stand up in front of any police or any authority to make sure that clients are treated well and their rights are ensured. Many of these peacemakers are basically a very sustained model. Maybe tomorrow we are not there, but these peacemakers will be there, and they are always a great champions of transformation and helping the community to come out. And I think the other important aspect of legal empowerment is that the community start listening and believing in the rights word, because for community in the community women's rights are not existing, and through our various awareness programs they start hearing this word and they start believing that oh, there are rights for women. And through our various programs we are ensuring that the approach is always right based perspective. If these peacemakers are reminding them that there is a way possible, and we always rely on these peacemakers in situations of emergencies also. If there is a necessity in the night, these peacemakers stand up and say I will go and help. Our founder Edgar Grobler always called them dragon slayers, and we are so proud to have these peacemakers, these community champions with us. This is very sustained models. Once a peacemaker is always a peacemaker. So no matter whether they are working later on with us or not, but whenever they see a woman in need, they always willing to help, connecting them with the right resources, whether taking to them to the courts, to police, to medical examinations, or any other approaching to any other resources. They are always there to help. So I think this is the most incredible journey that the peacemakers uh, travels, and along with her, she also empowered the other women. Maddie, can you turn the next slide? The other innovative things that we are doing at My Choices is police partnership and training. So considering our methodology and unique approach, Hyderabad police approach us to become official partner for counseling of the women who are going through domestic violence and approaching police. And since in Indian law there is a option for women if she want to go through counseling and resolve her issue through counseling. So in those cases where women are willing for the counseling, police partnered with us, signed MOUs with us, and sending these women to our centers where counseling help is provided. We not only providing counseling to these women, but we also training the staff of special women cells formed to address violence against women within the police premises, to make them more sensitive towards the community need and how they can handle the cases from a woman's perspective, that what all she needed during this process. Uh, my choice has always dreamed about a safe space where women can, if they are thrown out of their houses or they have no place to give, we always thought if we have a safe place women for women. And luckily we have a very good shelter home that we inaugurated last year November. We called it Lotus Safe Home, where women, we started this short stay shelter home, and where women can live peacefully and decide through the help of counselor and legal assistant, they can decide about their future. So we right now we have this shelter home facility also for the women. Next slide please, Maddie. If we talk about challenges, that after all these programs and counseling and handling this gender-based violence, what are the challenges? And I think in India, there is no dearth of laws. We have some good, really good progressive laws to handle domestic violence. For example, we have Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. And then we have law to handle child sexual abuse, which called POCSO, Protection of Children from Sexual Offences. And these laws are very progressive and laid out very well. But when it comes to implementation, it is very pathetic. And we always try to bridge the gap between the formal legal justice system and the community, where we can enforce the implementation also. So one of the most difficult thing is making these laws turning into practically from an implementation point of view. And then another challenge for us is identifying these community paralegals, because this is a very unique and very they require a very specific. So we always see what is first for us, because in community you cannot, at that level you cannot find a very educated and who can also lives in the community and help the women. So the education is not a uh, qualification here. Most of the time we see what is her passion, and then slowly building her perspective and skills and training and continuous efforts. Every after the full-fledged training and internship, we do hand holding capacity, monthly capacity buildings also organized for them to build their skills continuously. But the identifying such women is the most difficult and challenging part for us. And we always look forward for such women. We keep in our database whenever we have the opportunity, resources, we recruit and we train them. So right now, so far we have trained more than 200 paralegals, I think 250 paralegals, and right now 70 plus are working with us as a peacemaker. So this is I think is a challenging also, but encouraging also to always look forward for such women who have passion. And then another challenge that we really want to work on, and we are working in fact to engaging men in the community. So we started engaging boys, young boys, so that we can catch them before they turn into abuser, or involved in the violence and abuse. So we started doing through our school and college programs, but we also want to approach the community men. And that is one thing that we earlier we struggled, and now we are getting all the experiences and learnings. We are starting our men program in the community also. So we are trying to tie up with some organizations who already have experience in engaging men in domestic violence issue. We are trying to partnership, and we are building a program, because we believe that if men are part of problem, they should be part of solution also. So this year is going to challenging for us, because we are starting our men program, and we are hopeful that we will overcome with these challenges, and have men as ally, not as a problem with us, to handle gender-based violence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Farzana. That was really great to hear about the unique and important role that peacemakers are playing in your organization, since they're members of the community and they're able to provide a source of hope, but also a source of trust. Remember, if you have any questions for Farzana, you can send them to us through the questions panel, and we will answer them during the question and answer session. So now let's hear from Kate Flatley. Kate, take it away.
Wonderful. Thanks, Maddie. Hi, it's wonderful to be with all of you today. Thank you for your interest in the Women's Justice Initiative. My name is Kate Flatley, and I'm the Executive Director of WJI, which is based in Guatemala. Next slide, please. I'd like to begin today just by providing a brief overview of WJI's work, and then from there, focus on some of the challenges we've identified through our work on violence against women and girls, and the lessons learned and best practices that have come out of that. Next slide, please. So the Women's Justice Initiative focuses on improving the lives of Indigenous Guatemalan women and girls through rights education, access to legal services, and gender-based violence prevention. WJI works in rural Indigenous communities where women and girls face poverty or extreme poverty and high levels of gender inequality and violence against women. Guatemala has the third highest rate of femicide in the world and ranks the third lowest in Latin America on the Gender Inequality Index. Due to isolation and lack of access to resources, Indigenous women and girls are especially vulnerable to violence against women and child marriage. Generally, services in Guatemala are concentrated in urban areas and do not reach the rural population. Additionally, the services that do exist are often not offered in Maya languages or Indigenous languages. Next slide, please. So in response to these challenges, WJI implements a community-based methodology to address violence against women and girls through 4 strategic approaches. We focus on women's empowerment through our women's rights education program. We focus on preventing and addressing child marriage through our adolescent girls program. We train female leaders through our community advocates program, which is basically community paralegals. And finally, we focus on increasing access to justice through our legal services program. And we've used a methodology that focuses on eliminating key barriers that exist, including geographic, economic, and linguistic barriers that exist for Indigenous women in seeking services. And we also focus on transforming norms that view gender inequality and violence against women and girls as normal or acceptable. Next slide, please. So through our work over the past 8 years, we've identified a number of challenges related to preventing and addressing violence against women and girls. So first, the legal process poses a number of significant challenges for survivors of violence. Survivors confront administrative barriers in the legal process. Most notably, Indigenous women often cannot navigate the legal system due to the fact that services are provided in Spanish, and few state institutions provide interpretation in Maya languages. In addition to this, extremely long delays in the process, discrimination against Indigenous women by state actors, and re-victimization of survivors due to the lack of training for service providers are all common experiences that lead many survivors to abandon their cases during the legal process. A second challenge that we've identified in cases of violence against women and girls is ensuring that the needs and interests of survivors are identified and prioritized from the start. Through our work, WJI has seen that at times organizations can lose sight of the survivor in the legal proceedings, and women end up being disempowered by the legal process. So WJI strives to always place survivors' needs and interests at the forefront. You know, at times this may mean dropping criminal cases or pursuing civil rather than criminal charges, because ultimately, you know, as legal professionals, what we believe to be the best legal outcome may not be the best result for an individual client and may not address her most pressing needs. So our third challenge that we've identified and is one of our greatest challenges that faces our clients is the lack of support from their families and communities. Our research has demonstrated that the majority of our clients living in rural communities seek help from community leaders and family members before seeking assistance from the police or other government officials. And our research has found that when these women do not receive support from their family and community leaders, they almost always returned to abusive partners and felt that they had to endure the violence. So support from families and communities is clearly critical to breaking the cycle of violence and ensuring that women can seek redress. Next slide, please. So through our work, WJI has identified a number of lessons learned and best practices to respond to the challenges I just outlined. With regard to challenges within the legal process, including administrative barriers, delays, discrimination, and re-victimization, we found it is critical to provide accompaniment to survivors throughout the legal process in order to assist women in navigating a complex legal system. So we found that accompaniment must be provided from the community level all the way through court proceedings. WJI's accompaniment begins with our community paralegals, who we call community advocates. And these advocates provide initial legal advice and support to women in their communities. And then they accompany women to seek help from WJI or government institutions. From there, the advocates and WJI's legal team will support survivors throughout the legal process if they choose to pursue a legal process, providing both interpretation and orientation so that women understand the process and can more successfully navigate the system. Additionally, as part of our focus on improving the legal process and responses from survivors, from service providers, WJI provides training to judicial, police, and medical officials to sensitize them to violence against women and girls, re-victimization, and other barriers that exist for Indigenous women seeking help for violence. Through these trainings, we have measured improved responses by government service providers in cases of violence against women. In response to the second challenge that I mentioned, the need to prioritize survivors' interests, WJI has learned the importance of training its staff, including lawyers and paralegals, to ensure that they are listening to survivors and responding to their needs from their first meeting with women. So from the first consultation with survivors, WJI walks women through the process and what their expectations can be by providing an overview of legal and non-legal remedies that exist for clients. Additionally, we conduct an initial needs assessment to identify women's greatest needs and priorities. And perhaps most importantly, we provide psychological support to survivors to ensure they receive the emotional support they need throughout the process. Finally, in response to the challenges I mentioned related to lack of support from family and communities, WJI has built a program focused on developing community-based mechanisms to respond to violence against women and girls at the local level. So these mechanisms include our community advocates, who I mentioned earlier in the presentation, who provide support and accompaniment to survivors. We also provide trainings to community leaders, including elected officials and religious leaders. And those trainings aim to change attitudes related to violence against women and girls. And finally, we work with communities to develop what we call community action plans, which create referral systems for survivors seeking services at the community level from community leaders. So these are a few of the lessons learned and practices that we've identified through our work. I'm happy after the presentation to take any questions or expand on this in any way. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kate. That was really great to hear about how WJI offers services within women's communities, but also within their native language. And I found it really interesting that you change your legal approach once you've identified what a survivor's needs and interests are, sometimes placing these needs above what may be seen as a legal win, so that you're really addressing what the survivor wants. With that, let's hear from Fatima. Fatima, go ahead. We can hear you now.
All right. I'm Fatima Adamu, and I work with Isawali Empowerment Initiative in Nigeria as the programs manager. At Isawa, okay, so I'll give a brief background as to how Isawali started. In early 2000, a company tested their drugs on people living in Kano, and Mrs. Mariam West, who is the founder of Isawali Empowerment Initiative, was one of the lawyers who went to court on behalf of those people. And so when she got payments for her services, she decided to set up an organization as a give back to the community, hence the Isawali Empowerment Initiative. She named it after her father. But our work with the legal empowerment actually took shape in 2010 at the beginning, when we in 2010 around May, we learned of a girl, a 16-year-old, who had been abducted by 6 police officers and were repeatedly raping her and even pimping her out to other people and collecting money. And so we needed to respond, and we did not know how. So we came in contact with an organization then called the Global Rights, and then we worked together to find a way to respond to this, and how this is how we bettered our legal empowerment programming. Next slide, please. Okay, and so at Isawali Empowerment Initiative, our programs are usually mainly in 4 thematic areas. We support women, youth, and children through these 4 thematic areas. We have legal empowerment and the rule of law. Under the legal empowerment and the rule of law program is where we work with community-based paralegals. We recruit people who have basic knowledge, who can read and write in either English or the local language of where we work in northern Nigeria, Kano, Hausa, and then we train them to work in their communities. We have the girls empowerment, which focuses mainly on girls who are either in school or out of schools. We try to work to prevent early marriage and delay early childbirth through girls empowerment programming. We work through safe spaces for girls. And then for economic empowerment, we support women businesses, support them to grow their businesses, and then help them to become financially independent. And then lastly, we have family health and nutrition, where we focus on programming around health of the family, maternal health, nutrition for children and adolescents. Next slide, please. So these are pictures from our legal empowerment programming. If you can see, the bulk of the work that we do is mainly in the rural community. In the first picture to the left is a paralegal in one of the rural LGAs. You can see the building in the background. This is her jacket, the blue jacket that's a form of identity for the paralegals, identification for our paralegals. She's holding a community session in the community. What they do is help women understand the laws that are related to women and how they can use those laws to benefit themselves if there's a violation. And then we have here another session going on. This time there's a bigger circle because the number of participants here are much more. And then we have 2 males standing. Those are the paralegals. Here in the third picture is a session for girls, the safe space session for girls. In the safe space sessions too, girls also learn about their rights. They learn about reporting mechanisms present in their community. They learn about the legal clinics present in their communities and where to go if there's a violation. They learn about various forms of violation definitions and then what to do. And then the same picture, please, next slide. And so I'll talk about, in the next slide, I'm going to be talking about the most common type of cases that we see at Isawali Empowerment Initiative. Common type of cases that of SGBV means sexual and gender-based violence that we receive, are mainly cases of rape, and most times is rape of minors, children who are mostly around the ages of, say, 5 to 14 years. Are the most common cases that we receive. And so because these are the most common category of people whose cases we receive, as part of our programming in the safe space programs, the girls there learn about rape, definitions, protection, what they need to do to report. Another thing that is very common is the divorce. What's interesting about divorce is that, so in our background, we come from the northern part of Nigeria is a Muslim community that is conservative, and so the man is the one who pronounces the divorce. However, the woman can initiate a divorce if she goes to the court. A lot of times, husbands do not take responsibilities for their wives. Sometimes you receive a case where a married woman with about 6, 7 children has been left at home without a business to do, nothing to do, and her husband travels and leaves her behind for like 2, 3 years. He doesn't come home. He doesn't send anything home. He doesn't visit the house, and then she's left to cater to them. So when she goes for divorce, there's this. When she goes to initiate the divorce, then she's told that she has to pay him some money in the course of the divorce. That she has to pay. She has to pay some token to him so it can help him, for example, marry another wife. And so that type of divorce or talak is called skipped me now. But what it does is that the woman is supposed to pay some money. And so what the paralegals do when working with this particular set of people, women, children, girls who have undergone these various forms of attacks, is one, to make them first of all know the law. What does the law say? Who should I go to? Where should I go to, and how can it benefit me? And then secondly, they support them by following them, accompanying them, just like Kate said. They accompany them to these institutions and to make them understand who to see, how the institutions can benefit them, and make them understand the procedures in those institutions. In addition to that, they hold community legal education, where they talk about rights, educate the people, women and girls, about their rights, the laws that works for women. And then we have legal education classes where women enroll is mainly like a 3-month program. They enroll, there's a manual called Making Access to Justice Real, and women learn this manual, and the manual is sectioned into various categories. There are contents relating to marriage in Islam, divorce in marriage, divorce in Islam, how to institute legal action, who to go to, what sort of legal action to institute, and these are being taught by paralegals in those legal clinics. And then we also have paralegals work in group, and they work alone, and then they also report to who we call the supervisory lawyers. Supervisory lawyers are lawyers who have been called to the bar, who can go to the courts to give legal representations. And so, for example, in cases where the women want to institute legal action, in case they want to, the lawyer now files the case on behalf of the victim or survivor who wants to institute legal action. Aside that, our programs are, just like I said, we intervene in 4 different thematic areas. And so when we see that as part of the needs of the woman, for example, if the survivor is the woman, there's need for economic empowerment, then they are further integrated into the economic empowerment program, where the woman benefits now from a training that helps her do income generation, and then she can fall back. Because one of the major things we found is, I'll talk about it when I go to challenges now, but in addition to all that I've mentioned, there's issue of family neglect and trafficking or child labor as the common cases that we receive. Next slide, please.
Great.
So over the years, we've been working, Isawali has been working in this area for about 8 years now. And over the years, we found that these are the most common challenges. They are not all, but these are the most frequent ones that we see almost all the time. One of them is the lack of fallback support system. And lack of fallback support system is that it mostly happens in issues where a woman has been violated by her spouse, meaning mostly it's the husband, and she says she doesn't want to go on, she doesn't want to continue with the relationship. When she goes back home, the family a lot of times do not support her. Or if it's an issue of rape for girls, and you go back home, the girls tend to be the ones who get blamed for being raped. They ask questions such as, why did you go there? Who asked you to go visit him? Okay, okay, for example, if she wasn't forced using threat or knife, if she was drugged or something, like, why didn't you scream? Why didn't you say no? Those sort of questions. So, like, when there's no strong support system to fall back on, either in the community or in the families. Another thing that as a challenge is the weak justice systems. And so, because we have laws in the northern Nigeria, we have the penal code, and we have laws that talks about assault, but there are no specific laws that talks about gender-based violence, except for a new law that was made in 2014 called the Violence Against at the national level. And so for those laws to take effect in Kano, we have to domesticate it. It's still under process. We've been advocating and pushing for that with other partners, and it hasn't happened yet. We hope it will happen at some time. So we do not have gender-based violence, such as domestic violence, being captured as a crime in any of our laws that we're currently working with. And then there's this culture of silence, particularly when it is rape and is an issue of domestic violence, battery. There's this notion, an idea around if you get raped, you may end up not finding a husband or finding a spouse in future, and therefore when you keep quiet and you don't talk about it, you're protecting the family honor and you're protecting yourself. There's that impression, which is a huge challenge. So what we see a lot of times is that when an issue comes up, maybe an anonymous reporter, because we also take anonymous reports, someone says, okay, there's someone has been raped in that house, and you follow up, then you learn that they keep telling you nothing happened, no, not in this house, we don't have that kind of, no head of such cases. They're trying to protect their family name and their and the girl. And in the case of divorce, domestic violence and battery is that, marriage issues are sacred issues, they are religious issues, and therefore you must not talk about them in public. It should be something between you and your husband, and if you cannot settle it, then you have to talk to somebody who is either the pastor or the imam, a religious person who is seen as someone that can intervene, and therefore it's not a case that must be heard out, so you protect yourself. Sometimes it's case withdrawal. So because some of the cases are treated as crimes like rape, you must have a nominal complainant, and so they give witnesses. They are the witness in the case. A lot of times the prosecution will start and it will be going on, and you're following up on a case, because in cases of rape, what we do mostly is watch brief with the lawyers who work with the organization, and the paralegals follow up. And so in the middle of the case, like you have gone so far, then you stop seeing the people. Sometimes they are withdrawing the case because they do not have money, but a lot of times they just withdraw the case because they've settled outside the system, which also affects, which is also part of the weak justice systems we're talking about. The people abscond. Some people even run away from where the event took place, where the jurisdiction is to try the case, and they are gone, and you don't find them again. And so they withdraw cases in the middle of prosecution. Lastly is poor financial and economic status of the women mostly, because a lot of the women who get abused do not have financial independence. When they come to you and you're going to, okay, so we have a challenge, we do not have a shelter as it is, there's no shelter for any victim of violence to go to in Kano. And so if they come to you and they need a shelter, you don't know where to take them to, and they do not make money. Most of them do not have any form of businesses, or either that or the business they have is not even flourishing. It's something that is very little with small capital. And so how do we manage to move them away from where the abuser is and take them somewhere else? It's a huge challenge for us. But over the years, we've learned a lot. Lessons doing what we do, and we've also tried to mitigate some of the challenges through the work that we do. And so based on our mitigation strategy, we found the following to be the best practices that works in when dealing with this set of challenges that we have highlighted. One of them is that paralegals carry out court, village head, or institutional follow-up visits with clients. Just like Kate said before me, the accompaniment. If they need to go to the house, if it's a case of mediation and they need to go to the house of the village head, then the paralegal is always there to go with them to the village head. If it's or to the courts or to the institutions or wherever they need to appear, the paralegals follow them. And for each stage of the way, they explain procedures and processes to them. They encourage them to remain strong. And outside that, they keep falling back on the family because they want to strengthen the support system. So they support them to hold family meetings, educate family, encourage meetings in the home of the village heads, bring families together, bring parties together, hold that conversation, and try to push forward when it's a case that you can mediate. Another thing we do is capacity building for traditional institutions on human rights, in particular women's rights. And so a lot of times we bring together traditional leaders from religious leaders, traditional leaders from the communities where we work, and train them on human rights and how to protect women's rights. And so if an issue comes to you of domestic violence or something of that nature, the first thing you should do is treat it as a police case. Do not mediate unless it's something, because there are some offenses that are compoundable according to the penal code, unless it's something that falls under that and the courts gives you that permission to go and mediate it, then you go back and do that. So there's a lot of capacity building with the traditional institution. And then there's continuous capacity building with our paralegals. There are always new laws every day. They come in contact with new lessons each time. Each case has its own naughty areas, and so each time they come up across new learnings, they bring it to the office and we sit together with their supervisory lawyers and they learn every day. So capacity building is something that we do throughout our programming and is continuous. In addition to that, we hold joint actors meetings. These joint actors meetings brings together responders to issues of such of violence. We bring together the police, the law enforcement agencies, the community paralegals, the lawyer, the Sharia court judges, the magistrate, the Ministry of Justice. All those people responsible for promoting access to justice are brought to the same table. We bring up the issues, we talk about them, we try to respond to them, and then profile solutions as to ways to do and improve in whatever it is we're doing. There's continuous community legal education sessions and programs. We do a lot of we attend a lot of radio programs as guests. We take topics that ranges from girl child education to early marriage to whatever that may be the justice need of the people. We talk about them, and then we get questions and answers and try to respond to them. From time to time, depending on the resources we have short messaging in form of jingles that goes on the radio and that helps people to understand what violations are, and if they're encountering such types of violations or challenges, who to call, and a lot of calls comes into the office. We found that to be very effective for reporting. In addition to that, what really works is the business and financial literacy skill support for victims and survivors of attacks of abuse. Sorry, victims of abuse who are not doing any form of business or whose source of income is very low are integrated, like I said earlier, into our economic empowerment programming, and we give them some loan and support them to build their businesses. And then they also learn financial literacy, where they learn about saving, growing income, growing profits, and then etc., etc. There are a lot of things that is contained in the module that they learn. One strong selling point for Iway we've learned is storytelling. And so what we do, we have this series called Bara'atu. It's very popular here. Bara'atu is just a name that they're in different volumes. We take topics, the various topics. For example, there's one on rape, there's one on forced marriage, there's one on early marriage. And so what it does is tell the story of a survivor whose permission we get, and tell the story to people and use it in form of in form of storybooks translated into the local languages, which people can read. It comes with pictures and at the end, laws that are related to that particular violation in the storybooks. And so we use a lot of storytelling. This is what we've been doing, and these are the practices we found to be very helpful in responding to issues of gender-based violence over the years we've been working. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fatima. That was really great to hear about the different ways that I adopted as practices in order to best help women in their communities overcome these violent situations. For example, providing them safe spaces. Now that we've heard about the work of each of our three presenters, we'll open up the floor now to your questions and comments. And we're running a bit over on time, so if everyone can stay on for another 15 minutes so that we can continue to answer your questions and have a discussion, that would be wonderful. We'll start off by giving the floor to Lisa Hilpink, who has 3 questions that are relevant to each of our 3 presenters. So Lisa, if you're still on the line, go ahead and you can ask these questions.
Oh, okay, thank you. I didn't realize that I'd actually get to speak. So first, I just want to say to all 3 of you, thank you so much for your important work and for these really informative and inspiring presentations. This has really been an amazing hour. Thank you so much. So I have 3 questions, and it would take too long to answer them all, but my first one is about the identification and recruiting of the community advocates. Farzana talked about this as one of the challenges, but I wondered if you could just give some more specific examples of how you've gone about doing that. You know, it seems like it would be challenging just in one village or one area, and so how do you do it in multiple areas? And then I have a question about building collaborative relationships with service providers, and also if you could go about, or how, if you could give examples of how you've gone about that. I'm sure it varies depending on the country and the specific locale, but just to have a little bit more specificity around that. And then finally, if you have any experience or examples from urban communities. There's obviously a lot of marginalization in urban spaces as well, and wondering if you could speak to that, if there were unique challenges in urban contexts. Thank you very much.
Sure, this is Kate. I can jump on and answer our experience with your first question on how we identify and recruit community advocates or paralegals. That's been a challenge for us also, but we focus on a few key activities. We usually, our advocates or paralegals are graduates of our women's rights education program. So they've gone through an initial legal literacy course of 6 months, and through that process, we've been able to identify women who are truly passionate about this issue and we feel will meet our profile for advocates. Additionally, apart from the Women's Rights Education Program as a means to identifying advocates, we also work with organizations who are working in communities when we start working in a community to help us identify women who may be leaders in the community or women who other women often seek help from. And we also work closely with elected officials, so community leaders, indigenous leaders in the communities where we work who help us identify women who might be interested in these positions. Through that, then we go through a interview process and kind of a long selection process, because it is really important for us to ensure that these women are interested in doing the work and don't just feel that because they've been identified by others or nominated that they should accept the position. So we go through a kind of a long process of interviewing and selecting women. And we also find that in the communities where we work, we have multiple advocates, and we often look for different profiles for each of those advocates. So some of our advocates may be more focused on, may have a higher education and be able to facilitate workshops for us, and other advocates may be women who are kind of viewed as trusted contacts within the community and are women who already kind of play a role of advising other women and supporting families.
Would any of the other presenters like to add or respond to one of these questions? No? Okay. If Farzana and Fatima don't have anything to add, I'll go on to another question that we received from Sabine. So Sabine, if you're online, we can go ahead and unmute you and you can ask your question. Sabine, are you still online? Okay. I can read. Are you there?
Yes.
Great. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm French. I'm from Quebec, so sorry for my English. I will read my question. I'm from Lawyers Without Border in Canada, ISF Canada. So I understand that learning is the first steps. Learning our rights is the first step towards empowerment. For me, it's not really a goal, but a mean. At least it can be both. But what are the other steps towards empowerment, and how do you really measure legal empowerment? Thank you.
Fatima or Farzana, do you have anything to add?
Sorry, Maddie, I was not able to speak. So yeah. So in relation to Isa's questions, first question, and then I will take the other question, like how you measure the legal empowerment. So to the first question, identifying these women, as Kate mentioned, that is a long process. So in our case also, so what we did in my choices, we have 5 centers across the city, 4 in city and 1 in another district, and we always believe that the best help we can provide a community women when someone is situated in the community. So it is always within 3 to 5 kilometers of radius where we select these women, and we don't go with community leaders or people like that, but we always search these women who are already little active in the community in some or the other forms. So maybe this women can have a tailoring center, or maybe some local health worker, because government recruit the community women as a link worker to hospitals. So these women are already active in the community, but from a different perspective or for a different work. So we try always to choose those women who are who have presence in the community in some or the other form, where they are a little active and they have passion, and we link them to the a particular center. So in that 5 kilometers radius, they can cater those communities and link them. They can travel, because many a times travel is also challenge for these community women. They cannot go very far in the city. So we link to them that particular center, which is within their reach, and they are already doing some or the other work. So it's easy to upskill them, trained them, and then the training process is quite exhaustive and lengthy, because they don't have any earlier exposure or perspective. So most of the time we do a 10 days session, continuous session with them, and then slowly through monthly capacity buildings, we upskill them and turn them into paralegals. So this is how we do. And the next question, that how we measure the legal empowerment with the communities. I think what I mentioned, that when women started seeing uh, violence-free life as their right, and I think that is the biggest turning point in their lives. The number of women who are approaching, the number of women who get empowered and started knowing about their rights is the one thing. And the other thing is the less resistance from the community is also a good sign, where the community is starting opening up about the issues. So initially we had a lot of resistance in the community, but through our methods, through our peaceful building, the families, the individuals, somewhere we gave this message that violence is not something that
Farzana, are you still with us? Looks like we might be having a little bit of a connection issue with Farzana's mic. While Farzana figures out, are you still there? Are you connected? There we go. Okay.
Yes, Maddie.
Sorry, I think we had a bit of connection issue with your line. Fatima, did you have anything to add to either of those last two?
Yes. To respond to the issue of building collaborative relationship with service providers, one of the things we do is that we're members of many networks who has a lot of providers and responders from different categories. Like I said, we have the joint actors meetings, and the joint actors meetings bring together responders and service providers. Service providers such as organizations who are into counseling. We have people who do pro bono services of various forms and kinds. And so the joint actors meetings or platform and networks is a way that we work together. So we have various networks that we are members of, and then various platforms that we give access to. Apart from that, we have a referral system, where if something happens and I do not have the capacity to respond, someone else has the capacity, we the case to that person who tries to respond to that. On the issue of measuring legal empowerment, how do you measure legal empowerment? There's no set ways, but mostly what we see is at the beginning of the program, a lot of resistance from the community, paralegals not being recognized, people refusing to accept free services and thinking that once it's free is going to be or cheap is not going to be of quality. But over time, as we continue to work in those communities, we begin to see a lot of women coming forward, reporting cases, seeking for support and seeking for advice. We see police officers referring women to the legal clinics, saying, okay, there's an issue. this is something we need, you can respond to this, and we can have you respond to this. And so when that is happening, we're beginning to see that there's some level of empowerment on the part of the people who are targeting to benefit. And when women are beginning to say, I'll share a very short story. We run a legal empowerment program, like I said, and it runs for 3 months. And so in this particular community, there's always one government program or the other coming. And so we had this 10 set of women who had benefited from the legal empowerment program, and they were selected for a particular program. But when the program was supposed to start, they didn't see their names on the list anymore. But as a result of the training that they had gained, learnings they've gained from the legal education class, they went to the office and demanded that their names be put back on the list. And the names were put back on the list, and they refused to move an inch until they participated in the program. And so these are some of the things that we see and realize that, yes, women who ordinarily do not even know where the office is, on their own now decided to take action. And so these are some of the things we see, and we say, okay, there's an empowerment. And it's not just the group you're working with, it's them saying, it's clients coming to you and you're asking, how did you know about this organization? And they tell, or how did you learn about paralegal programming? And they'll tell you, oh, my neighbor told me because she was at a community education session and she directed me to this place. So we can tell that the knowledge they're gaining does not just stay with them, they're also trickling it down to other women. That's how we tend to measure sometimes.
So this is Kate. I would just, sorry, can I jump in and add something here too in terms of measurement? So I think as Farzana and Fatima both mentioned, it's challenging to measure legal empowerment, and we do it through kind of a mix of both quantitative and qualitative. Very similarly to what's been already mentioned, looking at how many women are seeking services from WJI. For instance, before starting our legal literacy course, 4% of women had sought legal services in the past, and then coming out of that course, 42% of women who graduated from the course sought some sort of legal services from WJI. So there's significant legal empowerment ability to identify legal needs that exist and then seek help for that. And then we keep track of referrals. So service providers who've gone through our trainings, how many of those service providers are referring cases either to our organization or other organizations within our network, and how many women who've gone through our programming are referring other women to seek services and are assisting other women, whether it's in their families or communities, to seek services. And then I think it's also important to mention the stories and the collection of the qualitative data too. So we conduct regular kind of semi-structured interviews with survivors of violence, with women who participated in our programs, with judges and police officers to understand how they view our work and what changes they're seeing in their communities as a result of kind of this legal empowerment. And then we also conduct focus groups and all other forms of collecting qualitative data to kind of support what we're also measuring through quantitative surveys and capture.
Thank you, everyone. That was great to hear. We have another question from Wigaye from Women's Legal Aid Center in Tanzania. If you're still online, we could answer your question. Oh no, I see that Wigaye has logged off. We just missed you. I'll read the question aloud anyways and see if we can get a response. Wigaye asked, how are we making women part of the solution and not only beneficiaries? Open to anyone who would like to respond. Kate, do you have any answer?
Sure.
Yes. Oh, okay.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. How are we making women part of the solution and not the beneficiaries? The paralegals themselves. We have female paralegals as part of the community, working as paralegals, as part of the community trained paralegals that we work with. In the legal education classes, all of the teachers who teach legal education in our legal clinics are all women, and so they are part of the solution. They also support women to navigate the systems, to understand the issues, and to also hold women's spaces to discuss some of these issues and how to respond to them. And so women are not just beneficiaries of the services, they are also the solution to the problems.
Kate, did you have anything to add?
Sure. So, just a couple of additions to that. We also, our advocates are all female paralegals, and all of our trainers in are female, are women who are educating other women in the communities where they live. And additionally, with our community action plans, women are involved throughout the process of developing kind of local response mechanisms and are invited to be a part of that process. So women are involved in designing those community action plans in their own communities in terms of responding to violence against women. And then I'd also say we really focus on being responsive to needs identified, especially legal needs identified by women in the communities where we work. So for a specific example is through our legal services program, women began to talk to us about need for support on land titling and registration. And so as that need was identified by women who were going through our programs, we developed a legal service component that focuses on titling land and assisting women in securing property rights.
Thank you. And we did receive another comment from Philomena, who said, great presentations and work from all three presenters. Thank you. Is there a way that we can reach out to them to collaborate in their respective countries? And the answer to that for everyone attending would be that you can connect with the presenters and the attendees via our online network. And that's actually where these three presenters have met, is via the online Global Legal Empowerment Network. Unfortunately, we are at time. This brings us to the end of our webinar. We have received so many questions. Thank you, everyone, for attending and for sharing your comments and questions with us. We'll be following up with the discussions, answering after the webinar on our online forum on the Global Legal Empowerment Network. If you still have questions or comments that you didn't raise during the webinar, you can always comment these on our online forum. We'll be in touch by email with a link to this forum post, as well as a link to the full recording of today's discussion. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.